or off?
I mean, we're on, but like we're not. Like Daniel's not going to put anything.
I'm not answering that question until we're off.
Who's got final edit here?
Well, okay, just put anything you can do to get Craig fired. Just put it at the top. We'll go from there. Welcome to the Georgia Politics Podcast. It is Friday, February 22nd. I am your host, Preston Thompson. Got a great panel of guests this week to talk about the week in news. Let's go around and quickly introduce ourselves. Start to my left here.
Hey everybody, this is Appen. I'm the host of the Inside the Box podcast and do a lot of work here on the Appen Podcast Network.
This is Craig Kidd. I'm first vice chairman of the Fulton County Republican Party and chief of staff to Johns Creek Mayor Mike Bodker.
Mike Kennedy, former Alpharetta City Council member.
David Heenan, disillusioned civil servant turned entrepreneur.
David's first time on the show. Thanks for coming
Welcome,
on.
David.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
So when Hans and I got the show started a little while ago, one of my goals was to not talk about the same things every week. I did not want to cover the same topic 2 weeks in a row. But as the Georgia Politics Podcast, if I go to work for a full week and pretty much spend 75% of my time talking about one thing, it's kind of hard not to talk about again. So, of course, we're talking about the news again about Speaker Ralston using his legislative delay privileges to enhance his own law firm and what sort of action is going to be taken against him. I would love to start with comparing what we talked about last week, which was we kind of ended saying, what are the chances that Speaker Ralston is still speaker at the end of the session? And I think we said 350,000% or something like that.
Pretty close.
Now, I didn't say anything.
I said
Yes.
350.
So
Okay.
I said 350.
Well, so let's start with you, Craig. Has that number shifted?
No.
It has not shifted.
No.
Really?
Has
Well,
not
let's-
fine, 250.
Let's add some context here. Representative David Clark from Beaufort has introduced a resolution on the floor and was gathering signatures for it today, calling on the speaker to resign his post. Now, it is a resolution, so if it were to pass, it means much ado about nothing. Yeah, but it's more of a kind of public relations move that if it were to pass, it would be the legislature telling Speaker Ralston, hey, you don't have the votes and we can remove you. And he would probably be inclined to resign at that point. He went around gathering signatures today. At one point, he had 22.
He being
And-
David Clark.
Yes.
Okay.
At another point, he had 15. When I left the office, he had 10, and now he has 9. So I want to quickly run through the names for those who are
Now,
interested.
is he saying he has 9?
So the bill was officially filed with 10 signatures, and
Okay.
then one representative, who I'll mention here in a second, went to, as far as I understand it, went to remove her name off of the bill. I don't know why. Trust me, I don't know why. But it was filed with 10 signatures. Now there are 9.
So you work in the Capitol. Can you explain a little bit how that works? So once a bill is filed, names can be added and removed after they.
I don't think they can be added. I think they can be removed.
They can definitely be removed.
Yes.
Okay.
So nobody can go sign on now. Signing on doesn't really do much. I mean, your name becomes public because someone is very likely to take a picture of the bill and text it to Greg Bluestein or somebody else who will text it to Greg Bluestein. But it doesn't put you as one of the
Or
top.
to the panel of the Georgia Politics podcast.
Well, it shows the support, and if it can also be used against you in a campaign if you really wanted to push it.
Right.
I mean, if a bill that says all dogs have to be removed from Georgia, if you're the 20th signer on the bill, your opponent can say you co-sponsored the bill to remove all dogs from Georgia.
They might not even remember it.
Yeah, so it can be used.
So let's run through the names really quick. Karen Mathiak.
Without notes, this is impressive.
The notes are right behind you.
Never mind. Good Lord.
Karen, boy, would that be impressive.
That would
Never
be
mind, there's no notes. Karen Mathiak. Did we decide that's
I
how
think
you
that's
say
what
it?
we decided.
Representative from Griffin signed on initially and then removed her name. Kevin Cook from Carrollton, David Stover from Noonan, Jeff Jones of Brunswick, Sherry Gilligan of Cumming, Ken Pullen of Zebulon, awesome, Matt Girdler of Tiger, Girdler alert, Michael Caldwell of Woodstock, Scott Turner, Holly Springs, and Colton Moore, Trenton, or Lookout Mountain. Colton Moore and Matt Girdler are probably the least surprising names that have
Can we
made it
call
on there.
Fulton Moore Gertler Jr.?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So these are the Republicans that signed.
Yes.
How many Democrats have signed?
None.
0. So I know that they were asked because it's hard to not notice. I mean, I've got eyes in the gallery and they were watching Representative Clark kind of work the floor, and I know that all of them, I think, were asked, or at least most of them. And I think when it comes to the signatures, I think they're steering clear. When it comes to the actual vote, I think more options are on the table. I think the signatures things with people adding and removing like crazy, I just think the Democrats didn't want to like put themselves in that. But when it comes to, if this comes to a vote, and we can talk about that.
If.
I know. So is this going to come to a vote?
How many? If the Democrat,
6 more Republicans and you got a majority, right?
Mike kind of shook his head no.
Wait, 6 more and you got a majority?
Well, if every Dem votes for it,
If every Dem votes
Oh,
for,
which is not guaranteed.
which
actually, would it be 7?
15 is the yeah, so 7.
7.
I
I
would venture
doubt
to
it.
say that
Yeah, I doubt it.
it's extremely unlikely that every Dem would vote against it. Isn't he the only thing standing in between Georgia and RFRA laws at this point?
So, yes and no. I mean, presumably, if he were to be removed, that would make Jan Jones speaker.
In the short term, yes.
Does anybody at the table have a bellwether of Jan Jones on religious freedom?
I
legislation?
think Jan Jones, being from Milton, recognizes that would echo what Speaker Ralston said earlier this session, that there are things that don't exactly improve the GOP's images in areas that we lost last November. I mean, Jan Jones, she usually wins with 70+% of the vote. I think she won with 60, 61, 62. She was our best performer that night. Still a 10-point drop. You can't ignore that.
Well, then I'm wondering, because a lot of this pressure on Speaker Ralston comes from conservatives.
Yes.
So I'm kind of wondering what the logic is there.
Well, and let's be careful with the phrase "a lot of pressure."
Yeah, sure.
I mean, I'm looking at this list, and thank you for putting it up. I mean, you got Gertler and Gertler Jr. Caldwell and Turner a lot of these guys are very conservative, as you just said.
Are any of these people attorneys?
Liberty
Are any of these
Liberty
lawyers?
Republicans, exactly. Paul Brown type Republicans.
He's a Tea Party Republican.
Tea Party Republicans. They go by lots of different names. They wear the Liberty pins.
That's right.
Are any of the signatories attorneys? Do you know?
Caldwell, I believe.
The only reason I say
Caldwell
that is
an
because
attorney?
this has been
so.
going.
No. He owns a company that sells nothing legal. His bio doesn't say anything about him being a lawyer.
I thought it was, but
Maybe he has a law degree, but I don't think he practices.
he's into cryptocurrencies now.
Yeah. I don't know the answer to that question.
Well,
I
Mike, what were you
apologize.
going to say?
Well, the only reason I asked that is because
We can,
because Ralston is not the only attorney in the legislature
Certainly
that takes
not.
advantage of this law,
Well,
which could be easily remedied by they're taking a sledgehammer to something that requires a scalpel.
I think,
But-
I have thought for a while now I don't want to say it's an easy out because it's not easy. This is all messy, but kind of the natural out is, a public condemn his actions, change the law so he can't do them anymore. He stays as speaker. I have thought that was going to be the out for this for a while because the law currently states right now that you can use legislative delays at any point during the year. And it used to just be you can use them during session. And of course, an AJC report out today said that Speaker Ralston played some sort of part in the change of that legislation. Now, this was years ago, but these accusations have been leveled at him for years. So,
and he's been around for a long time. I mean, he was in the Senate. He ran for Attorney General in 1998. He lost to Kip Klein, may he rest in peace. So I mean, he's been around for quite a stretch. But I kind of agree with what you said, with one very important difference: the public part. Somebody can come up to the speaker and say, look, we got a problem here. Let's do this behind the scenes. Let's do this privately. You make some sort of promise that you and your law firm will start moving on these cases. And you apologize to whoever you need to apologize if you think so behind the scenes. And you tell these 10 people, look, it was a blah, 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 error in judgment, however you want to phrase it. You do it behind the scenes so nobody has to feel like later that there needs to be retribution. If this is done publicly, then 6 months later, the next session, there's going to be retribution of some kind, and rightfully so. things can be done privately behind the scenes that has everybody win. Because if these 10 guys, if their purpose of doing this is to defend the people who Ralston is, or defend the victims of Ralston's alleged victims of Ralston's clients, then their motive should be moving forward on the case, not dethroning Ralston. So that's why privately that they should be happy.
But is that the only motive? Because I think the stronger,
not among I would say just off looking at about 4 or 5 of these guys.
That
but the
wing of
stronger
the party's been gunning for Ralston
Yes.
for a
right?
long time.
Well, and I was saying the stronger argument in some of this has been the misuse of a privilege afforded to him, not necessarily the clientele. And I think because a lot of people don't want to get into the clientele argument because everybody has a lawyer, everybody has an attorney. And of course, this is a little bit different of a case, but it's the abuse of the afforded privilege that I think is what more people are fighting for. And justice for the victims is the kind of the wonderful byproduct you get by making sure he can't do this anymore.
That's what brought it back. That's why the AJC or WSB, I think, brought it back, because there are some criminal victims here. If all the people in question were tax
Divorce.
evasion or a divorce or a victimless crime, no one would care. That'd be lawyer looking out for lawyer. Okay. But we have child abduction. I mean, we got some really interesting, seedy stuff here.
There was one quote in the most recent AJC piece about it that the defendant said he had specifically selected Ralston's firm.
Yeah.
I believe it was for a DUI charge.
I saw that.
And paid them $20,000 cash, and it has not gone to court, and it's been 10 years.
I guess my point is being that in this, not to say be too broad here, but in this age of Twitter and YouTube and social media, there is still a value in doing things privately and behind the scenes. You can still get what you want done, and it's better for everybody involved. And I hope that these people realize that is an option.
But the time for that has passed.
Well,
This is okay.
think
Maybe
it
it's a
has.
personal opinion, but when the AJC and WSB put a joint story together that's like 2,000 words, I mean, like the pressure is coming from the public. So a solution in private maybe is still on the table, but like there is concern and outcry for this, and there are radio hosts and activists everywhere that are calling people, or that are telling their followers to call their legislators, and the phones are ringing off
Eric
the hook.
Erickson will not drop it for about 2 weeks now, and he's a voice.
another guy who doesn't like the speaker.
Right.
Well,
I mean, there's
a lot of about half the Republicans don't like the speaker, and I think the larger issue though is a abuse of power and a cronyism issue. That this is why they've been gunning, and this just happens to be, the thread they can pull on.
Would their time be better spent co-sponsoring legislation that would fix the law?
Well, I think that too, because
Is that a rhetorical
A
question?
No, it's a legitimate question. Something that actually has
a
some teeth in it.
removal of Speaker Ralston as speaker and making him a regular legislator means he can still use the legislative delay privileges. He maybe has less coverage because he's not the speaker, so he's not as busy, but the same privileges are afforded to everybody. So
That's a good
I think
point.
it has to be. I really hope it doesn't stop there, even if he is removed as speaker. Like it really shouldn't, because the real problem here is, for some people, it's two-pronged. It's the idea that he is speaker still and that he's abusing the power, and you can't solve one of those by just removing, or both of those by just removing him as speaker.
I'd be curious to see the follow-up piece that the AJC does that says how many other legislators are using this and how often.
I can tell you from conversations that there are some. That is the most vague thing I can say, but he is certainly not the only one.
More or less than 10.
Now, I would say it's more common to the stuff that I think Craig was alluding to, not the
Criminal.
Criminal.
yeah. But again, I personally don't like the arguments we get into about the clientele making the biggest difference in all this. I think the clientele makes this especially kind of prevalent in the news and in people's minds because he is serving this kind of ulterior motive. But like, I don't want to get into that business because attorneys get their work where they get their work, and everybody needs one.
deserves a lawyer. Absolutely. My question is though, is he taking advantage of this law to personally enrich himself or to obstruct justice? Because then it goes beyond an ethical question and into the criminal realm. And at the same time, where is the Georgia Bar Association in all of this? This is who should be policing their own and the use of these procedural regulations.
Have they made any statements
No.
about it? No.
Well, but I think they are required by their own rules that if enough complaints are submitted or inquiries are submitted, they have to do an investigation into this.
Inquiries from other attorneys?
From the public, from
The Georgia bar doesn't answer to the public.
I think you can levy complaints against attorneys as a individual to the Georgia Bar Association.
You can, but is anybody in here a lawyer?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, quick disclaimer.
Yeah, nobody in the room is a lawyer. Lawyers have a very protective sort of thinking. Say it all falls back on the zealous defense of your client. Their own set of ethics and their own rules, they're very protective over, and they believe that it is sacrosanct. That as officers of the court, they believe that their rules that govern themselves and govern the court system are just as important as anything else. It's like what I tell friends of mine who get mad when they have jury duty. And they try to think of all these different ways to get out of it. And I tell them, the judge is not going to buy that.
Right.
Because to a judge, jury duty is the ultimate service that a citizen can perform for this country. He is not going to let you out of it. To them, it is sacrosanct.
Absolutely.
So the zealously defending your client to a group of lawyers is sacrosanct. That's why if we were a bunch of lawyers in this room, I think our opinions would vary a little bit.
Maybe.
And why the Bar Association will not be so quick to jump, because there are other lawyers who are doing similar things, maybe not in public. I mean, delaying a case is probably law school 101.
Well,
So-
I would think so, but don't get me started on a semi-private organization, policing access to our public courts. I mean, we could go down
Right.
that street, but
And I think you said last week on the show, if you were a judge in one of these cases and this story came out, you'd be absolutely off the wall.
Well, I think I said the district attorney, I think, would be more
okay.
upset. If I said judge, I apologize.
But they can
the
they
district
can both
attorney should be.
they can
both
both
of those
talk to the
parties,
bar.
Where are
Yeah.
the judges
No, they
on
can.
this too?
But what's the bar going to say? They're going to say he's following the law, sir. We may not like the law, but it's the law. It's not unethical
Well,
to do what he's doing. Does it look bad? Yeah, but it's not unethical.
I think
Well,
there's a
I would take a point there. I mean, intent comes into how we define ethics, and if the intent is really to zealously defend his client, then sure. But if the intent is to keep somebody from facing justice by taking advantage of a law, or to personally enrich himself because he has access to this law to the benefit of his clients, then there is an ethical violation.
and how would you ever prove that to the level to an attorney's level of proof?
Well, I mean,
That's the problem. I think that's why the bar
We'd have
would
to do
laugh
just
at the idea.
discovery on communications, emails, contracts, a history, a pattern of behavior, all things that play into proving a case in court.
That DUI case I mentioned that's been delayed for 10 years, the defendant said he specifically hired Ralston.
But did Ralston indicate to that defendant that he could do this before being hired would be the key piece of evidence. Now, I would definitely go to the most influential, most powerful attorney I could get my hands on should I need one, regardless of what they tried to sell me, because, I mean, none of us are dumb. We all know how this works, right? But if he indicated to one of these defendants that because of his position, he could have special privileges, then that is crossing a line, in my opinion.
Look, everyone who runs for the state legislature knows from January to April-ish, I guess March, April, my business, I'm going to have to juggle my business and my service, right? Whether you're a newspaper editor, newspaper editors generally don't run for the legislature, but whatever business you have, this should be no different, Just fix the law.
Mm-hmm.
When you're in session, this applies.
Because,
at sine die, you're on your own.
Right.
Go to
because
court.
it is Clark has liked to mention in the statements he's made that over 80% of the delays that Ralston has taken have come outside of session. And he is speaker. Those duties extend outside of the legislative session, not to that extent.
Well, then don't be speaker anymore, or quit
That
your,
too.
or quit your job.
And
One of the two.
I thought that is the most compelling argument that Clark has made is clearly he can't do both jobs, and he has made his priorities known about which ones he would rather do. So
Can I ask one question on David Clark?
Yeah.
And it switches gears on us a little bit, but we talked about this a couple episodes ago, the list of potential candidates for the,
He's moving on up
7th
there.
congressional
If
district.
I may, before we go into it, which I'm more than happy to leave the subject. And I like Speaker Ralston. I think he's has been a very good speaker.
For the record, I think he's a great speaker,
And he's
which
a
makes this very difficult to
he's
deal
a
with.
fantastic
Yeah.
guy. I still remember one of the last sessions where I was there. I ran a March Madness pool, and he was the only legislator in the pool. And he just loved it. He was a great guy, friendly, funny guy. I think before we turn to subject, I think we need to comment that both Governor Deal, Governor Barnes, and Stacey Abrams, to a slightly lesser degree, but have all three of them have supported
Right.
and have all taken a legal sort of angle on why this is important that this law exists and why this is done.
Governor Kemp as well has also shown his support.
Right.
Stacey Abrams.
Is Abrams an attorney? I should know that.
Yes,
She
Yeah.
is. Okay.
I don't think
So
she.
She doesn't
well, I guess-
practice, I
yeah.
don't think, but she's an attorney by trade. So you have three attorneys who are.
And her
said-
statement was kind of very neutral, which kind of screamed in favor almost because she's the most prominent Democrat in the state right now. I think she said this is an issue for the General Assembly to handle. I used to work with Speaker Ralston and we did some good things together. That's kind of the essential bit, but it was almost like, wow, okay, so there are some interesting lines being drawn and some teams being picked. So with that, is this actually going to go anywhere?
No.
Nope.
Yes.
Okay. Well, there's right now, I mean, it has to go somewhere. It has been filed. There are signatures on it. So it will be assigned to a committee and just sit there forever.
Yep.
No.
Something about this tells me that the public pressure will be so much it can't just sit still. I mean, that's going to, because the speaker has this kind of weight and power of these over these sorts of situations, there's not a way he can orchestrate it dying in committee without people saying, how was this not you administering this?
A week from now, it won't even be in the news.
I disagree. I said that last week.
When you do the next show.
I said that last week. I didn't think it would still be in the
last week.
news now.
Well, I wasn't here last week.
I say we change topics.
Well, yeah, to Hans's last point, David Clark, I think, is signaling probably an increased candidacy for Congressional District 7.
Certainly now.
Yeah.
Is that for sure? Does this for sure increase his profile for that?
I would
seat?
say now he's one of the top 2 Republican candidates.
But if this crashes and burns in his face,
More reason to run.
I still think so.
More reason to
Okay.
run
Oh,
because
yeah.
now you're persona non grata.
And it's
You're
not
enemy
just
number one.
It's not just this claim he's staking out that makes me think that. It's the idea that he feels he's safe enough to do this. Because if you thought you were still going to be in the legislature for a while, Speaker Ralston would not be the
We're
best.
also being very cynical.
good
here.
Sure.
I mean,
But this is the Georgia politics podcast.
It is a political
Not
conversation.
the Georgia
but,
Candy podcast.
But somebody asked me today, texted me saying, what is he doing? And I said, well, how depends how cynical you are. You have,
Sure.
he
Let me guess.
sincerely believes, or he's using this as a stepping stone for attention for a CD.
Why can't it be both?
It can be.
Yeah.
Maybe he could run on the platform of draining the swamp.
oh Lord.
Well,
Cronyism.
You think that would work?
In Gwinnett?
Oh, apparently anywhere.
In Forsyth more than Gwinnett, but yes, I mean, I think
He's
it
draining
would.
the swamp.
I
maybe
think that's
it would.
exactly right. I think Craig made a point earlier that this could be used for retribution later, but I think more near term it's primary politics. Primary voters are Libertarian Republicans, Tea Party Republicans, and by and large in those districts they aren't satisfied with Ralston's leadership in crony politics, and that's what I think he's posturing for right now.
I think it's unique to note that the two biggest names for the seat now are now David Clark and Renee Unterman, who are at different stages of being outcasts in the legislature. I mean, you see this everywhere in any state when you have a legislator or a councilman or whatever who is no longer in the leadership or no longer has a clear path to having his or her bills move forward, if you will. Suddenly, other grasses look greener.
Right.
Happens all the time. I expect, why do half the House members run for the Senate? For Congress. Well, I'm not going anywhere in the House.
Right.
I've been here 10 years. I don't even have a subcommittee chairmanship. I'm not going anywhere. Hey, Senate seat looks great.
All right.
You'd rank them over David Schaefer right now? Both of them?
I personally would.
Yeah. Okay.
I think they have more passion for the job than Schaefer has at the current moment. Let me phrase it that way.
Okay.
Sure. And they have a lot of opportunities to do some things and to get in the news. But
you're right. The second Schaefer declares, he becomes a preeminent individual in the race.
okay, let's move on to one of the most important relationships we could talk about, which is the Hartsfield-Jackson Airport and, I guess, everyone else. So currently
entire
Hartsfield-Jackson,
East Coast.
I know, currently Hartsfield-Jackson is managed by the city of Atlanta, which under recent years has come under investigation towards the tail end of Kasim Reed's leadership for multiple things. One of them being a kind of contracting purchasing manager for the airport has gone under investigation and been prosecuted and convicted, maybe, I want to say. So not great things there. And in response to that, some members in the legislature have taken up an idea that Georgia can manage Hartsfield-Jackson and take control of it. This is
you'd
going to
like
be
that,
a
Mike.
fun conversation topic. So right now, Atlanta is the world's busiest airport. Also recently ranked right around the Super Bowl as one of, if not the most efficient airport in the world. A lot of people are scared about it possibly changing hands to the Georgia legislature. I know this kind of committee on the possibility of this was supposed to dissolve, I think, a couple months ago, and they're still kicking around. So I don't think this is an idea that's going away anytime soon.
Yeah, absolutely no state takeover, in my opinion. I mean, you got a new governor that threatened essentially the largest customer for the airport, and now he's going to take it over. And to that point, I mean, I'm not sure the city is the right person either. Most major airports, Metro Washington Airport Authority, Chicago, they have independent airport authorities that are run like public corporations with boards and quarterly financial audits. I think that's the best way to do it. Especially when you look at the kind of trends in our politics where it's becoming more partisan, closer margins at the state level, and we just finished a conversation where retribution was used. I don't think the airport needs to be a political ping pong between the two sides when it's our number one economic driver in not just the city, but the state.
Well, it is funny. I was looking at Senator Burt Jones and his statement on it. Said he exactly didn't want that. He didn't want the airport to become a kind of political tool. He wanted an arm's length from politics. But the proposed kind of Georgia authority over the airport has the governor or the governor's designee or the speaker or the speaker's designee. And I'm like, okay, how is this? This seems even closer than just having it be under the mayor's purview.
Well, it sounds like every other authority. I mean, every authority in Georgia has a governor appointee, an LG appointee, a speaker appointee, and then however you do the math. So it sounds like I haven't looked at the setup of the bill, but it looks like it's similar to every other authority in Georgia. So at least there's nothing unique about that. We spoke about this beforehand. I just don't know how to address this issue, and I apologize. I'm not better educated on it without knowing how other airports are run.
Well, our producer Daniel's helping us out here by pulling some information up on the screen.
Okay.
But it's
who runs O'Hare?
Well, and
I mean, there's their perfect competitor.
I'm with Craig.
Department of
City
Aviation.
of Chicago.
So I'm with Craig a little bit. I actually have some questions. I don't know if any of you all could answer them, but I want to know a little bit more about the process. For example, if does the city of Atlanta own it? Are they contracted to run it? How can the state? What's the process for just doing that?
Well, there's a general manager that currently runs Hartsfield-Jackson, and he is appointed by the mayor.
But who owns it?
I think appointed by the
City of Atlanta.
mayor.
The city of Atlanta.
City of Atlanta. So
Right.
the state is saying we're just going to.
Eminent domain.
If there's one thing this state legislature does extremely well, it's take things away from
people's stuff.
cities.
So if
They love to get in the city's business.
So if the
That's what
state-
they exist for.
if the state of Georgia came down to Alpharetta and said we'd like your community center, we're going to take it. There is
I would find that
Because it brings in a
I would
lot of
find
money.
that not unusual at all.
really okay,
Well, they might want to put a
Because
martyr
that's
rail
what they
right
do
through it,
every
so.
session.
but they have that legal authority to
Sure,
do that.
and
okay.
they exercise it.
Okay.
There's also a different sort of controversy around this with a proposed city of South Fulton and making sure the city of South Fulton doesn't accidentally take in the airport property, which right now I think they're doing everything in their power to avoid that right now. But I think currently it is owned and operated by City of Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
I think Mayor Bonham's office has said something to the effect of if the state legislator or a state agency thinks they can run Hartsfield-Jackson and make it not only the most busiest airport in the world, but also the most efficient, then please give me your suggestions because they're number one in both categories. We should also note the CEO of Delta Airlines has come out and said this is a bad idea.
Yes.
He minced no words.
No.
I think it was like an 8-word statement.
Yes.
Well, he also thinks a second airport is a bad idea, and a second airport is a good idea, which is where this
show your work, Mike.
This has been a discussion for a long time around here. I mean, and the city of Atlanta and Delta Airlines have blocked a second airport for decades. So, that's all part of the discussion as well. And I think that's something that this committee or this group is also supposed to be looking into, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe that's one of their secondary missions, is the feasibility of a second. Now, if the state wants to run a second airport or an authority, somewhere up on the north side, I think that'd be fantastic. But yeah,
that seems very. If you don't mind, it seems very Republican to have like direct competition influencing like free market economics. Like we got a competing airport now, and we'll show you how it's done. I like it.
Well, look at the cities you just put up on the board: Chicago, D.C.,
Republicans,
New York.
Republicans generally speaking have been in favor of some competition at Hartsfield.
Right.
Yeah.
So, the closest one, the last one was one out in Paulding, right? They got really close to
Comet
to doing that one, and that's right in the heart of modern day republicanism, if you will. But no, I remember when we moved here in the 80s, I was like, well, all the people, why is the airport so far away? That was sort of the perspective up on the north side. We need an airport on the north side of town because we shouldn't have to drive all the way down to Hartsfield. This was before the MARTA went to the airport. And I don't think, and a lot of people, I don't think that sentiment has changed. Now the land is so expensive, it's marketed out. But back in the old days, that was a common topic.
Mm-hmm. And I think Delta played a big role in blocking that.
Sure.
Of course, with Delta, it's the devil versus the devil you don't.
Yeah, and why
Delta
rock
doesn't
the
want
boat?
they don't want to deal with the state or an authority, or they in the city of Atlanta, they have a good thing going.
Yeah.
So
Why rock the boat?
Lots of tax
Rock the boat.
credits, and
Yeah,
if the new airport opens, American or United will put a hub there, and then they'll have direct price competition, and they got a good thing going here.
Yeah.
Especially since it's the number one transit port for the U.S. military coming and going overseas as well. But my thing is, A, the state definitely is not the right authority to run it. There's plenty of examples why. But B, you have a conflicts of interest run amok in the state house. We talked about Renee Unterman. She owns or has interest in the largest Medicaid contractor and is the chairman of the Health and Human Services Committee. Was, exactly. And the owner of the second largest taxi cab company is chairman of the Transportation Committee and was the leader against the anti-Uber initiatives a couple years ago. And so why would we even entertain that idea? But it seems like both sides are in agreement around this table right now. So,
well, I do want to ask Mike about what your thoughts are on the current makeup of our state legislators and it seems like drive to strip all local control away from local municipalities and take them over at the state level.
Well, I could give you several examples. They're going back and forth with the city of Alpharetta right now over this cell tower bill, where basically the state has come in and said, the city has no power over this. We can put a pole in someone's front yard if we want to, or a cell company could if they wanted to. So it's issues like that. The Fulton County tax assessment cap a couple of years ago. Now they're telling counties how to assess their property. They're telling them where they can put cell towers, taking away regulations in terms of how you can, down to home construction, everything, all the way down to the construction of individual homes. Now the state legislatures, they want to take the city's powers away for that.
But what does that say about the state of the Republican Party of Georgia?
It's pretty sad. It's a sad commentary
I
on the party of limited government and local control. They spend half their time taking that away.
What do you say, Mr. First Vice Chair?
I don't see it. I don't see it in partisan lights.
I was going to say that too. A lot of the stuff that takes away local control is a pretty unanimous one-sided vote.
But I think it's a rural and a suburban sort of outlook on things. Van Smith, who is sponsoring HB 302, which was the building design bill. He's from Pine Mountain. He's from the area surrounding Columbus. There's a reason why the bill was sent to the Agriculture Committee. I mean, this is a bill stripping cities of design ability, and it's at the Ag Committee. There's a reason for that. I just think that this shows a better divide between suburban Republicans and rural Republicans, as opposed to liberal versus conservative, or some Republicans not being conservative enough. I wouldn't make it an ideological thing. I would make it more of a geographical thing.
Well, the cell tower bill and the Fulton County tax cap were both sponsored by Fulton County legislators. That's not. They're not rural.
And Brandon Beach is a co-sponsor of the state takeover of the airport.
Yeah.
Well, let's wrap up on that very somber note. Yeah. I don't always like to end this show with Mike saying it's a sad state for the Republican Party, but if he wants,
wait till next
to
week.
do it every week, we'll keep bringing him back.
Come up with something better next week.
So let's end the show as we always do. Let's go around the table, talk about what we're watching for this next week. I will go first, so nobody can take mine. Although I'm sure it's very predictable. I'm very excited that a lot of presidential candidates are valuing our state enough to come here a year before primaries start. We've already been visited a couple times. I think Amy Klobuchar comes either this week or just came or is here currently. Just came. So I am excited to see who comes down here next, and if they go the non-Klobuchar route and try and do kind of a rally format instead, like Elizabeth Warren did, and get a bigger crowd. I think it's going to be interesting to try and build up momentum.
Was Warren's crowd not sufficient? I didn't really follow the story much.
I didn't follow it much either, but I know that Klobuchar got some backlash for coming here just to do like a Buckhead style fundraiser. And it's like, okay, well, but it's also a year out, so I try and not
talking about divisions within the Democratic Party. We didn't talk about.
We got plenty of them.
Yes,
we got
you do.
16 or 22 candidates, so we'll get
the
there.
Warren versus Klobuchar, we talked about this morning. It shows the state of the Georgia Democratic Party when a presidential candidate comes down here and gets a significant pushback from the younger progressive wing of the party for the audacity of having a fundraiser with Governor Barnes, who was the leader of the party for 12 years if you want to be conservative.
You can come on my other show, the U.S. Politics Podcast, and we'll talk about
that's the one for me. Actually, earlier this week, Stacey Abrams was asked on NPR about a presidential candidacy, and she didn't say no. So hold on to your pants here.
We might get to talk about this a lot more.
All about potential, baby.
Yeah.
Potential.
Stay tuned, Craig. We'll keep coming back.
Depends on how much money she raises between now and her announcement, right?
Book tours. It'll depend on the book tour. How well does she do in Seattle? How well does she do in Chicago with the book tour?
All right, Hans, get us off this topic.
Yeah, so one thing that I'm going to be looking for is the AJC and WSB's continued coverage of the Speaker Ralston story. I do want to make note that we would not have spent a half hour talking about that if it weren't for the job that they did, and I thought it was well done. We wouldn't be talking about it, this decade-old story, if not for local media. So although they are technically my competition here at Appen Media Group, I tip my hat and wish them well in their continued coverage.
Craig?
I kind of stole a little bit from about when we started talking about 302 and local preemption, because there's now a Senate bill that does the same thing. HB 302 did pass the Ag Committee, so it's sitting in House rules, so I'll be paying attention to that, especially since the Johns Creek City Council on Monday will be taking up a resolution condemning the bill. I do expect it to pass, probably unanimously, because it is a despicable usurpation of municipal and county power. And so we in the cities have to always be very careful about that. I just don't necessarily.
Usurpation.
Word of the day is usurpation, folks.
Yes. And since this is a local and not a national, the other thing is a very national thing, so I won't bring it up.
And we'll talk after the show. That's
okay.
fair.
I'm going to throw in two, now that he opened the local door, two sort of semi-local regional things that I'm watching. And then one's very local. Monday night, speaking of city councils, Alpharetta City Council will vote on a redevelopment proposal for North Point Mall, which is a very big deal for all of the North Fulton area in general. And my dark horse, this is a couple of weeks away, but I may not be invited back next week after this week's performance, is the MARTA vote in Gwinnett County.
Oh, yeah.
You're not hearing a lot about that, but I think that's a big deal.
Yep.
We talked about it a little bit last week,
But
very briefly. I kind of made the point that until someone's willing to spend some money to get that pro-MARTA vote out, that thing's going to fail.
I'm excited to talk
Until-
about it as we get closer to the
Yeah.
vote and the
Was that
different
2-3
groups that are
weeks
gonna
away,
involve.
something
Yeah,
I think
mean, you got to spend money to get votes out,
I think it's like
and I don't see any evidence that they're doing it.
Daniel, can you look up the Gwinnett MARTA vote date so we don't leave people just like, oh, it's sometime. You'll figure it out.
It's late March.
You guys covered all
One of the
fun
Tuesdays
stuff.
in March.
David, go ahead.
Yeah, mine's not local at all, but what I'm looking forward to is Michael Cohen's testimony in front
Oh, wow.
of the House.
Yeah.
I think if the Dems were smart, they'd schedule it at prime time, but they won't because they're not. So that's what I'm looking forward to. And then, of course, it seems like every week we got a big name jumping in. So, Joe still has to make it official, and I just have a hard time believing that Hillary's going to sit on the sidelines and let everyone
gosh.
have fun without her.
Oh my
Just
You
God.
don't
seem
really,
like a
you don't,
style.
you honestly think she's going to jump back in?
For those not watching
I
the film
honestly-
right now, my head is in my
mean,
hands.
Wow,
I honestly think that I wouldn't be surprised if she did.
you have guts, my friend. You have guts.
I'm pretty good at political prognostication. You can ask Hans.
We may have a Mueller report next week too, or soon.
That seems
According
like it
to
might.
CNN.
That seems like it might affect Georgia somehow. We'll
might.
figure it out. Okay, the Gwinnett County MARTA vote is March 19th.
Okay,
we
3
found
weeks
out.
away.
So
4 weeks
everybody
away.
knows now. But that's gonna do it for us this week. We will see everybody back on the show next week. Be sure to subscribe, share it with your friends, and there will be a whole nother week of I'm sure some more David Ralston stuff. So until then, we'll talk to you next time.